thank you for joining us for the Creating Inclusive Economies webinar. We'll be talking today about how to open opportunities to refugees. I'm Hope, Regional Manager at Welcoming America, and I'll be your moderator for today. We'll be covering a few objectives. By the end of this webinar, you can expect that participants will understand the importance of welcoming refugees into local economies. You'll be able to apply new strategies for increasing refugee participation in local economies, and you'll be able to collaborate with local partners to strengthen your economic development work. Our agenda today will first cover welcoming economies as a win-win and give an overview of why this is really an important topic. Dive into creating welcoming economies through collaboration and creativity. And there you'll hear from the International Institute of Buffalo. We'll go to building and connecting communities, where you'll hear from the Welcoming Center for New Pennsylvanians. So thank you, panelists, for joining us today. We're really excited for our discussion. And we'll end our webinar with some time for questions when you can directly ask what's come up for you during the webinar to our panelists. So feel free to chat in your questions, and we'll be recording those as we go along. As I said, I'll first provide some context for us today. Economic opportunities to refugees is really a win-win, both refugees and for the local economies that refugees contribute to. When they're working in jobs suited to their skills or are able to launch an entrepreneurial idea, everyone wins. For refugees, access to economic opportunity can mean upward mobility and a better salary, and being better able to reach their greatest potential in the U.S. and fully contribute their talents to their new communities. Long residents reap the benefits of economic inclusion as well. The positive impacts generated by refugees quickly accrue to non-immigrant workers and families, raising incomes, creating jobs, and fostering robust growth. Benefit even more when they take an active approach to support refugees in integrating economically. We'll be sharing with you today examples of programs that support refugees in fully contributing their talents. Before deeper, let's get clear on what we really mean by economic development. This definition of successful economic development from the Brookings Institution. They say that successful economic development should put a metropolitan economy on a higher trajectory of long-run growth, improving the productivity of individuals and firms in order to raise local standards of living for all people. The last bit about achieving growth and prosperity for all people, talking about inclusion, is especially important for those working in refugee resettlement. To make sure that economic development is inclusive and fits everyone, including refugees and receiving communities. Some examples of economic development strategies that you can aim to make more inclusive of refugees are entrepreneurship, workforce development, high-skilled worker initiatives, rural development, urban agriculture, encouraging home ownership, and a few more that we'll talk about towards the end of the call. Focusing especially on entrepreneurship and workforce development. Impact studies across the country are helping to make the case for a welcoming approach. We contribute to the local tax base, bring new life into neighborhoods, increase economic efficiency by reducing labor shortages in low and high-skilled markets. Naturally, refugees and immigrants also play an outsized role in entrepreneurship. You can see here that refugees and immigrants start businesses at 2 times the rate of the U.S. born. While immigrants and refugees make up 13% of the U.S. population and 16% of its labor force, they are 18% of U.S. business owners and, remarkably, 28% of Main Street business owners. These businesses are dry cleaners, grocery stores, restaurants, clothing stores, department discount, electronics, for the places that you're going on a day-to-day basis. Just how neighborhoods are shaped and communities are built by refugees who are starting or own businesses. To develop models to better support refugee entrepreneurs from a couple of our panelists. Especially across the Rust Belt and in legacy cities, those are regions that have experienced population loss and aging populations in the post-industrial economy. These have seen the need to welcome immigrants as an economic development strategy. St. Louis, Buffalo, Dayton, and Pittsburgh are realizing that much of the population growth they are currently seeing is actually due to immigrants, and recognize that it's in their best interest to welcome immigrants wholeheartedly into the social and economic fabric of their new hometowns. Economies Global Network, or Global, a project of Welcoming America in partnership with Global Detroit, sprang up to support local economic development initiatives that recognize the opportunities created by immigrants and seek to support them landing in local economies. Other organizations, such as economic development agencies, can be a key strategy for increasing economic opportunities for refugees. We'll hear from International Institute of Buffalo about their work partnering with We Global in just a bit. I'd like to turn it over to Denise Behag and Chris Messias from the International Institute of Buffalo to tell you about creating welcoming economies through collaboration and creativity.
Excited to be on the call. We have been very fortunate in Buffalo in that the city has recognized the positive impact and influence that refugee resettlement has had on the city. It's obvious just from driving through the city in neighborhoods that were kind of on the downturn and more dilapidated, that have been really some new life breathed into them because of refugees not only resettling into those neighborhoods, but building their own businesses, stores, purchasing homes, and really starting to change around areas of the city to the extent that other areas of the city are now asking resettlement agencies for help in developing those areas to look more like the areas that refugees have made successful. 1% of the population right now is refugees in Buffalo, and our mayor has really made a point to say his goal is to continue to increase the number of refugees that have been resettled. Our city is experiencing growth has not seen since the 1950s for many reasons, but the largest being the influx of refugees and immigrants coming in. So that being said, we really believe that partnership is the way to go. Thinking collaboratively has really helped us in a lot of our efforts with work with our clients and in developing relationships. And collaborations include many different things. It can include shared grants and shared funding sources, shared resources, or referrals to maximize our efforts that we're doing. I think also that it's thinking more outside the box. Traditionally, I know that we and a lot of agencies really looked towards only funding sources. So ORR was really the place that everyone looked to funding, and I think that ORR has made it clear in the past that they're not going to be able to continue to support a lot of that programming, but it also brought opportunities that are available to us to look at more non-traditional routes for development and funding. A lot of shifts, local organizations that are impacting our clients and our outcomes, but some are more non-traditional. So, for example, the Partnership for New American Economy, the National Institute and Center State CEO of Syracuse a grant called Gateways to Growth. And the goal of that grant is to provide region-specific data about the economic impact of refugees. There's all numbers that are thrown around, and those numbers can really impact an organization or a funder's preference of supporting a particular project. But that a lot of time those numbers are very general. They're national, or they're studies that have been done in other regions. This is going to really be helpful to us because we're going to have actual data that reflects our particular region. So when we go to local funders, we're going to have something to show that's very specific to us and our clients. Our partnership with the We Global Network, we are a steering committee member. We are one of a few organizations that represent refugee resettlement and especially employment. Our partnership and our involvement in Global is to sort of help reframe refugees and immigrants as an economic asset and to share programmatic best practices. Another local grant or a local collaboration we have is with we have 4 resettlement agencies in Buffalo. There are 5 VOLAGs represented within those 4 resettlement agencies, and you can imagine that sometimes it can be somewhat repetitive in a good way. But this year, something really exciting happened. New York has funding for employment programming, and in the past, the resettlement agencies have all different ways to apply for that funding, or paired up 2 of the agencies and another 2 agencies and really focused just on doing our own thing. And this year, we really worked strategically together to approach the state and more money, but more importantly, the focus of this grant is on very specific training for refugees. So each agency owns a piece of the training, and we can cross-refer our clients. We think this is going to maximize the impact that this grant has. People are going to have more opportunities and options available to them, but the fact that we work together and shared create a much more attractive package to the state. We're fortunate in one of the nonprofits here is called WEDI, stands for Westminster Economic Development Initiative, and WEDI focuses on creating incubator businesses for the refugee and immigrant population. So let's say we have a client, who was a chef and who is really interested in starting their own business to, cook easy food. WEDI will work with that individual and some other nonprofit agencies to create a business plan, to actually give them space in a marketplace that's shared. There's a shared kitchen. Work with them on doing inventory, stock, everything really soup to nuts, no pun intended, to create their own business within and within the bazaar. And then once they get to a comfort level where they're able to turn a profit, some of those individuals go on to have businesses in other parts of the city. And it's done a couple of things. It's really helped us help our new arrivals that have dreams of owning their own businesses to do so. Some people, very small businesses that they start there. We have one woman who works a full-time job and a local grocery store, but her part-time job is doing macrame at home and selling it in the marketplace, and she started that business probably 4 months after she arrived here. So it's given a lot of visibility also to the refugee population. It's become some of a destination inside the city for people that live outside of the city. I partner with them. We've had grants that we've shared with them, but we do a lot of cross-referral to that organization. I'm going to have Chris talk about our relationship with the Labor Place, which is an employment agency, I think really that can be replicated in any other city that has a similar employment agency if you find the right one. So I'm going to hand things over to Chris.
Hi, thanks, and welcome everyone. Real quick, I'm fortunate that and maybe many of you are too, but for the newer ones it might be different. The Institute has been around for a long time in Buffalo, and Buffalo has been welcoming refugees for quite a while. So we have the benefit of a great reputation as an agency, but also building the reputation of the refugees, which 100% of employers and decision makers in Western New York, where we serve, they win situation with refugees. There's never any pushback. It's them calling us saying, we need your people. They understand the win-win, the hardworking, the refugees are, and so they get it. So we're fortunate to have that to build on. And then going out and talking to new people, there's always someone that you can refer to, which is nice, and say, yes, it's a full program. The people are great, so we're fortunate in that end. A couple of the collaborations that we work with, Denise mentioned the placement agency. Worked with just started last year, employment agency, placement agency, who was looking at some construction workers and was willing to put them through OSHA training and asbestos abatement training. So we asked very carefully what their needs were as far as skills, brought candidates together and used some interpretation. They were hired, and of all 6 that were hired, they are all still working today, and that's never happened for this company with any cohort they'd ever hired. What the agency did for us was they for placing people, obviously, and we negotiated a certain flat fee that after 6 months or 9 months of being a job, we received payment from the agency for providing them with the people. So it's a nice little, and hope to continue doing that with them. We've done a couple others actually. And it helped the construction company and it helped the placement agency. So, working together, all 3 of us understood there's a benefit for all of us. We all have something that the other needs. Just a couple of collaboration things I'd mentioned, since that's sort of the theme. Recently met with the Buffalo Niagara Manufacturing Association. They actually just merged, and they came to us too because they've heard of the refugees, and they know that they're good workers, but there's 50,000 manufacturing positions in Western New York that will need to be filled over the next 10 years. We asked them, we want to know, what are the skill sets you need? How do we work together to get the people trained for what we need? And we will be working with them very closely to get the people that they need. If it's just in English holding back, well, we provide a class, but they're very interested in working with us and us them too, to people up and trained and up to speed in the new high-tech manufacturing world. We've also spoken to, or I've spoken to a bunch of private companies. Approach that we want to be problem solvers. You need staff you need good, reliable staff with low turnover. How do we help that? And we're looking to develop training programs and talk about training programs like CNA, home care, that sort of thing. We're people that are arriving, we look at their skill sets, and they've done working in healthcare in their home countries or in camps. And how do we apply this? How do we get this to the agencies? And they're all very interested in working with us and trying to get the people the certification, obviously, that they would need in New York State or the United States, everyone up to speed. So the private sector here is very open to training, to working with us, to working with our, and I think that's it for me now. And let me say this too. I'm not what everyone's employment either. So for me, questions are certainly, I welcome them because I'd like to let you know what works well for me.
So we're going to just jump to the next slide just to sort of give an overview of employment. We were told just to touch on employment before we go into the job upgrade thing. Just very quickly, we've been providing employment services for over 25 years, and I would say in the last 3 years we've changed how we do employment, and I think we believe that sometimes you have to keep changing things just to meet the needs of your clients and what's happening in the community. Especially because of the new arrivals and the new populations that are changing, we've also adapted how we've structured our employment services. We're engaging our clients much earlier about employment, and don't just mean engage in terms of linking or enrolling. We actually assign them a case manager. So they have a case manager for resettlement, and upon arrival, they have a case manager for employment who's checking attendance in job club, checking attendance at ESL class, and having them literally help do resumes so that they understand what a resume is and why it's important. We're not so much doing things for them, we're doing things with them. All of our clients receive financial literacy training, personalized budgets, pre and post employment, as well as linkage to bank accounts so that when they do go to work, they've already got their bank account set up. They understand the difference in what their budget's going to look like if they're working versus not working, and how much of a difference that increased income is going to have in their family. We have something called World of Work Orientation, which is native language employment information, as well as a weekly job club that's run. Basically, the expansion of our employment programming funding to include more mainstream funders. Again, this goes back to looking at New York State refugee employment programming, but accessing programs that are run through the Department of Labor, like the Consolidated Funding Application Grant, which is paying us to hire a teacher to teach manufacturing training, and we're using that manufacturing training as leverage for New York State-funded application, which is placing people in manufacturing-type jobs that we're getting reimbursed from. So we're sort of leveraging refugee-related employment funding against non-refugee-related funding for refugees. So I'm going to just turn it back over to Chris for our final blurb, which is about job upgrades.
I think when we originally meet with clients, we'd like to get them obviously prepared as best we can with going to job club, working on the soft skills, telling them about different kinds of industries, what jobs may be available. And the skills, really try to find out what they've done in the past and where those skills could be applied. Our life present, and what I mean present, is available for both the employers and the clients. From the view to showing up the first day of work with them if need be, just so that everyone has a comfort level, especially for new employers. Whether interpreter there to go over some language things or make sure the client's comfortable too, we like to do that. So we really want to take that we're helping solve a problem, and we're committed to the refugees, our clients, and the employer too. What we suggest or what we encourage is take first job, get your experience in the United States working. It helps their English, obviously, being working here. But build some skills, build some soft skills, show up to work every day. And we really explain this to them very well, that what approach is. It's not just if you're washing dishes or if you're working in a manufacturing, just loading boxes, nothing wrong with that. But to aspire to do something more, okay, great, but take this job, understand that this isn't your only job in the United States. Everyone can move up in the world. So after about 6 months or so, we'll call them back in, get them to come meet with us, and that's what they've been doing. And can, if they want to, they're looking or move on. They have a resume built here in the United States, and we always say, it's certainly much easier to get a job when you have a job. So we can up their position based on what they've done here and the reputation that they certainly showed up every day, that they're hard workers, and now they have some good reference. So we like to do that for all of them, bring them back in, assess what they've done, and move them up if that's what they'd like to do.
Just one last note, too. One of the most creative programs that we have is fee-based English as a second language classes. We've worked with a lot of employers who really are interested in promoting the refugees to higher paid jobs or higher skilled jobs within their organization. They want to encourage that job retention, and we all know that refugees are known for their strong work ethic. But we had a few different employers who have talked with us about not just offering English as a second language class on site, but very specific contextualized ESL classes. So what we've been able to do is go into those employers, sit down with them, work to create a curriculum that's very specific to that industry and that employer. We do pre- and post-testing. So let's say it's an 8-week class. We do pre-testing to see where their employees are at that level. After class, we go back in and do post-testing so that the employer can see that there has been an improvement. And as I said, it is fee-based, so it's additional income for us, but also really helps to solidify that relationship with the employer. And because it's very personalized, they buy into it as well, which also helps us do additional placements in that employer because they're getting workers that are very specific to them in their industry. Thank you. Take questions later.
Well, thank you, Denise and Chris, for that really useful overview of your services, and it's great to hear about your approach to partnerships. Now, hear from Natalie Kramer of the Welcoming Center for New Pennsylvanians on building and connecting communities.
Everyone, I hope everyone's doing well today. My name is Natalie Kramer. I work at the Welcoming Center for New Pennsylvanians. We're located in Philadelphia, and we serve the greater Philadelphia region. I work as part of our Small Business Development Coordinator. At the Welcoming Center, our mission is accelerating immigrant integration and economic advancement through education, training, employment, and entrepreneurship. Since opening our doors, we've served over 14,000 people from over 140 different countries. We see ourselves as an economic development organization rather than a social service agency. This is important as we discuss equitable opportunities because this perspective is how we develop our programs and advocate for refugees and immigrants in our community. We see immigrants and refugees as an asset to our economy, and if given the proper supports, these individuals will diversify and grow our region. We're also very fortunate to be part of a larger network serving refugees in Philadelphia. We have 2 refugee resettlement organizations, NSC and HIAS, that provide a multitude of support needed for refugees when they first step foot in Philadelphia. So we see this common thread of thinking about partnerships and working with other organizations to best serve refugees coming into your local economy. So just start now. First thing I'd like to touch on is identifying barriers. While some that are linkages throughout, no matter what your city is located, what refugee community you're working with, there are other that are more nuanced and specific to your experience and who you're serving. The ones that I'm going to touch on today are education, language, establishing a safety net, access to capital for entrepreneurs, and business training supports. Refugees may not have access to formal education in their home countries, and this can limit their opportunities in Philadelphia because they will have lower earning potential and limited access to jobs with a career path. It's important to note I'm not just speaking about climbing the corporate ladder, but also jobs that require only post-high school certifications. These jobs can also provide higher rates of job security and career growth. English is also a key step, not only to educating yourself, but opening up more opportunities in the U.S. economy. At the Welcoming Center, we put a major focus on cross-cultural competency and also contextualized English. Helps refugees and immigrants participants learn the many nuances in U.S. and Philadelphia culture. As part of establishing a safety net, without knowing anyone or about the different services they can utilize, this can be very challenging and even harder, often feeling alone and isolated in their new city. In addition, many have experienced unimaginable trauma before coming to the U.S., and it is important that we create a safety net that also includes emotional support as well. The next two are more specific to entrepreneurs and refugee business owners here in Philadelphia. One is access to capital. Capital is very difficult because traditional banks need to see long credit history and how much money you have in the bank, which is not possible at first for refugees coming into Philadelphia. And also, business training that's very specific to their needs and barriers that they face. Understanding zoning, credit scores, commercial leases, etc. It's hard for anyone, let alone someone with limited English and experience in the U.S. business environment. We focus on providing business classes that help them navigate both new country and also this new economy that they want to join in on and support their families. So to address the many barriers refugees face, I want to get clear that these barriers do not in no way, shape, or form limit potential, nor should it exclude anyone from contributing to our economy. What are some of these additional resources needed to weave refugees into our economy? And that focusing on next is the solutions and program projects that we've put in place to help provide different opportunities for refugees here in Philadelphia. And I work as part of our small business development. We'll be focusing heavily on our entrepreneurship, but I, of course, also want to discuss our education and training department as well. So we can just get right. At the Welcoming Center, we've learned and developed different programs to address these barriers and move more towards an inclusive economy. As part of the small business development program, we use specialized community-based business training classes that focus on increasing their business acumen while also addressing the many barriers they face while building a business. If businesses start on a rocky foundation, they will struggle for the life of the business to keep things steady, and it will make it harder for their business to grow. One program that we've put in place roughly 10 years ago was our English for Entrepreneurs class. This is a 6-week class that covers English and business topics. The joint training with our education and training department. Classes are both an English instructor and a business content expert. These classes cover crucial components that rely heavily on the understanding of U.S. culture, such as customer service and how to market your goods in your community. It also covers business planning, account basics, inventory control, and management, as well as other topics as well. In addition, we recently adopted a 12-week business class developed by the Neighborhood Development Center in St. Paul, Minnesota. I'm really excited about this program. It has incredible opportunity for growth and serving even more immigrant and refugee communities here in Philadelphia. This is an incredible curriculum that's been fine-tuned over decades and has transformed communities with their place-based approach in the Twin Cities. They work with their local community leaders and train them on how to teach these business classes, and that they work within their own communities and cultivate entrepreneurs that will in turn invest directly back into their communities. Address our refugee population and starting this new program, Melia Harun went with a member of the Eritrean community to be trained in this curriculum, and together they'll start teaching the class for Eritrean community members here in Philadelphia. Since we're just starting this new curriculum, this is our first trainer trained in the curriculum. As we go on in the future, we'll identify even more community leaders, bring them in to be trained on the 12-week curriculum, and then support them as they teach within their communities and throughout Philadelphia. Both English for Entrepreneurs and NDC business model held in the communities and commercial corridors that we serve and are focused on individuals living in the area as well. Specifically, we work in low-income communities in West and Southwest Philadelphia. The goal by making these trainings place-based is that we are directly investing in these entrepreneurs who will then open stores or start providing services in the underserved and low-income communities. Next solutions that we've focused on is access to capital, which can make or break a business throughout its lifespan, whether it be helping it fit out a brick-and-mortar business or when they're starting out or on down the road to keep them steady when there is a large unexpected expense that has hit their business. Thing that our refugee communities most often do not have access to because of the barriers that I've mentioned before. A few ago, my colleague Melia Harun and myself part of the Refugee Microenterprise Loan Program as the Business Technical Assistance Partner. Our local partner, WORC, provided the loans that were provided by the Office of Refugee Resettlement. These loans are very important to refugee communities because it is a character-based lending. This can play a huge role in the entrepreneur's potential and potential growth of their business because it focuses on the individual and their business skills and personal drive, and much less on their credit score or amount in the bank. An example of this is that we are working with an entrepreneur and learning about their business experience before they were to apply for this loan, and they discussed how when they were in a refugee camp, they had a small business of selling goods as much as they could while living in this refugee camp. If you go to your local national bank, they may not consider that when giving you a small business loan. But as part of this refugee microenterprise loan, that's taken into consideration and much less on their credit score or any other numbers attached to their name. If not an organization within your city that is part of the Refugee Microenterprise Loan Program, I would recommend to seek out other community development finance institutions. These organizations are aligned with the character-based lending mission and working with low-income communities. I also wanted to share some stories and anecdotes of best practices that we've learned through these two programs and working with refugee communities. If you're building a relationship with refugee communities in your city, start with finding associations and community meetings. Attend those meetings and engage with the community during these events they've planned. You're going to have a much greater turnout than if you were to initially try and put one together yourself. Link yourself to the networks that are already there within these refugee communities. Another really key is to build trust and rapport with their respective leader. An example of this is when we are working as part of the Refugee Microenterprise Loan Program. We are working with an Eritrean group, and when with them and discussing the program with their leader, we learned there were many members of the Eritrean groups there that wanted to be part of this program and wanted to start their own business. However, they will not participate until the community leader does it first. He complete the process, the entire loan process, and getting the money, so that the others could see that this was a viable opportunity and not some type of predatory loan. Being federally backed was not enough. Just needed to see their leader go through the process and say that it was okay. So now that I've touched on programs and some best practices that we've learned, I am going to touch on the Welcoming Center's education and training. Like previously mentioned, English and contextualized English is very important for employment and also continued education. We view it as a first step in the economic development pipeline into Philadelphia for our participants. In-house, our classes include multiple levels of English and also GED for higher level English learners. Just our entrepreneurship program, we want our participants to flourish from a solid foundation. So cross-cultural communication and job preparedness are learned in these classes. Examples are resume building, interview skills, soft skills, and even navigating public transportation in Philadelphia. Also, one sort of add-on, since we really are talking a lot about connections and partnerships, it is very important to connect with participants, to their quality resources in your network based on their needs and barriers. Since we're not a lender, we help prepare their business acumen and then connect them to different types of lending options, such as the Refugee Microenterprise Lending Program with WRC. Credit Score, another example, where we work with partners to identify saving and credit building loan programs that would also help build their credit score, since we provide those services ourselves. Also at the Welcoming Center, I know we've previously in this webinar discussed employment and employment opportunities for refugees. Unfortunately, at the Welcoming Center, we cannot provide employment services to refugees because our specific program can only work with immigrants with work authorization. After our classes or any other type of training that they participate with in our class, we connect them to a local partner called Devs to assist the refugees and participants. At the Welcoming Center, we understand that we cannot build an inclusive economy for refugees on our own. The refugee resettlement agencies, community leaders, lenders, public officials, and many others to create this environment. And I hope to leave some key takeaways from my presentation. The barriers that block refugees from becoming a part of an inclusive economy is critical. We strive to be a needs-based program, and really goes to what are the needs, what are the barriers, what are the things that people need to learn, and what are the issues going on in the local refugee or immigrant or small business community. Find partner organizations and government entities that will create this holistic approach. There are areas that we unfortunately cannot serve our participants but by having quality partners that we can refer to and partner with, create a much more holistic approach and to better serve our participants as a whole. For our small business and training education, it's integrating cross-cultural competency. So with that is job preparedness and other resources that will better connect them later on in a long-term success. And lastly, collaboration with refugee community leaders. This is really important to establish trust and build that pipeline with refugee communities of referrals and strong relationships. When you have new programs or new projects or new classes, whatever they may be, small business-based, or you're adding an ESL class, you have these strong connections and you have community leaders that have paved the way for the refugee community that they are a part of. And that is the end of my presentation, and thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Natalie, for that really informative presentation. Before we turn to questions, I'd like to share a few resources that are available to you if you have just been inspired by this webinar and would like to dig in deeper to some of these topics. The Guide to Immigrant Economic Development is available on our Welcoming America website, and it's designed to provide readers with a new understanding of what's possible when immigrants and refugees are embraced into regional economic development plans. The guide chronicles a number of local initiatives in areas that we've discussed, a few that we haven't discussed, such as entrepreneurship, workforce development, highly skilled worker initiatives, and rural development. So take a look. There's a lot of good information there for you. Also about an upcoming event that we are putting on at Welcoming America. For those interested in trainings and the opportunity to network with others that work in this area of immigrant economic development, we invite you to join us in Philadelphia this October. We're working with the Welcoming Center for New Pennsylvanians and with Global Detroit to host this convening. It'll be full of sessions and great information on the topics we've discussed today. And more information is available at weglobalnetwork.org or through the Welcoming America website. Finally, we want to invite you to join us at the Welcoming Refugees Forum. This is a new opportunity. It's an online social platform. You can continue the conversation about the webinar on our Welcoming Refugees Forum. They have the opportunity to engage in special discussions before and after webinars. You'll have access to Welcoming America staff. You can get these sneak peeks at some of our new resources, share successes and challenges in welcoming. Our presenters will be available on the forum as well, so you can continue to ask them specific questions and have some dialogue even after the webinar ends. You can fill out an interest form at the link that's listed here, and a staff member will contact you with login information within 1 week. So we hope that you join us there to continue the conversation. So to questions, I see some folks are chatting questions in already. Let's start off with a question for the International Institute of Buffalo. It sounds like folks are really interested in how you're approaching new organizations or companies that you'd like to collaborate with. Can you say a little bit more about how you approach a new organization or a company that you're interested in collaborating with, and specifically, how do you get companies buy-in on hiring refugees if this is something that's a new idea for them?
A couple things. One, the buy-in, like I said, there's so many success stories locally, and certainly you could say, but so many companies have hired refugees that it's simple to say, to test and say, hey, you know, so-and-so's hired them and they're great, talk to them. So use testimonials, obviously, I think is the best approach there. There's success stories here. As far as the training goes, by looking at job boards, by reading what's going on in the business news, where demand is, you know, what are the trends in hiring, find out who the players are, who are the leaders in these fields, going to them, and you see them looking for people, obviously. But when you identify trends, approaching them and say, listen, you know, we got a flow of people that are hardworking. The door is open for someone to come in and talk. Because if you're taking the approach, I want to solve the problem of capital, of people, of labor, the decision makers are willing to talk to you and listen. So the approach is almost successful with us. Whether we get a program put together, you don't know, because there's obviously details that need to be worked out, but people are always willing to talk.
At times, you know, we've been approached from, like, P Incorporated is a great example. They're a local nonprofit that work with individuals with disabilities. They read about a grant, and we've worked off and on with them in the past trying to write grants together, but there's a lot of synergy between and other special needs groups that aren't so obvious. One of the ways that we approach job development are. So I think adding us to the mix makes oftentimes their grant be a little more attractive. And sometimes we're finding that they're approaching us, hey, we're writing this grant, and we'd love to be able to include your population in some way, shape, or form. Can we work together? So again, it's just not being afraid to think outside of the box and just pick up the phone, make a call sometimes. Hey, did you see this grant? Have you considered writing refugees and immigrants into it? And we'll help you.
That's a great point. Thanks for sharing. You know, sometimes it's that very first conversation, the first way that you can find to work together that can then lead to a longer partnership. And a follow-up for you, Denise and Chris. Are employers frustrated when employees only stay for 6 months and then go for an upgrade? So specific question about your job upgrade practices.
No, let me just tell you that it's not that that's not the rule. Okay, let's put it that way. It's something we like to do for, well, everybody, but it's not that everyone's leaving after 6 months. It's most stay where they are, and because they understand that and we explain to them, there's mobility within the company you're working for. But something for people who so that it's not their only job they can have. So it's
similar for clients that are coming in maybe with more skill level, pre-work experience, that are maybe a little hesitant to take the first job, but we're to let them know that they need to get that work experience, that they need to get those references, need to get their English ability up a little bit.
Or if they have a skill, like they're a welder, there's nothing open right now as a welder. Take the job, get some experience, and we'll work on the welding thing. The employers generally are very happy because the guy worked out great. Yes, they're okay, they're maybe losing a good employee, but we've got more waiting for you. So that's how we build the relationship with the employer. They're very understanding that if somebody making $10 an hour at them and he goes and he takes a welding position at 16, that makes sense and that's good. And they've been a great employee, so they're very supportive. So they're willing to work with us again. So
that's helpful context. A question has come in for Natalie. How soon after arrival do you find most refugees are ready for business trainings and contextualized English classes? And how are folks referred to you?
It varies. When we were part of the refugee microenterprise lending program, it was capped at 2 years. So we really had to work with people that were within those first 2 years of coming to the U.S. We work with them closely that had just come to us 1 month before reaching out to us. However, we also did have family that was all in Philadelphia. So we already had a bit more of a safety net already established when starting to work with us. But for those within the 2 years, and then our education department, it really can be as short as 1 month or however long they'd like. We've worked with people that have been here 20 years and are just now deciding to learn English or take some additional classes and are coming to meet with us. We have no limit on that as well. We work, and how people find us, a lot is word of mouth. We work with a lot of different immigrant communities. They'll reach out, they'll contact us if they have families or individuals that would like to participate. All of our classes fit on a first-come, first-served basis. So it's they apply to be part of the class. We do our intake, make them aware of our expectations and goals for our different programs, and then we'll fill the classes based off of that. So a lot of it has been word of mouth. A lot of it is working with our local community development corporations. That specifically with all of our small business trainings, we work very closely with the community development corporations that are located near or on the commercial corridors that we serve. So that way they already have a lot of linkages within our communities and commercial corridors that we serve with the outreach, and also we can provide those trainings in the CDC so that the business owners don't have to take any more time out of their day to come to any of our business trainings. They're able to then complete training and then walk right back to their business.
Thank you. And this will be our last question. We're having a lot of great questions coming in, so I encourage folks to take those to the member forum if we haven't gotten a chance to address your question. So for the last one, for anyone who would like to respond, for a smaller settlement agency, let's say a place that has one employment specialist, do you have suggestions for which initiatives to focus on to begin including refugees in more economic development efforts? We'd suggest beginning with entrepreneurship, with skill development. So I'll open it up for anyone to respond.
Nice. So I guess I will start. That's a tough question because it really, going back to some of the barriers, it also depends on the local economy of the city that you're serving and what needs are based on the individual. In our organization, there's a lot of focus on the contextualized English as the pipeline to employment and workforce development. So if you're able to buy these English classes that also have job skills and job preparedness integrated into it, I think that's a great opportunity to help integrate the or individual into your local economy.
I agree with her, and we're good with that.
Thank you.
Well, let's put it that way.
Wonderful. Well, that keeps us on track with our timing here. So I'd like to share with you our various channels for keeping up with Welcoming America and with other trainings and events that we have pipeline. And we want to thank you all for your participation today. Please continue the conversation with us on the member forum. And a big thank you to our wonderful panelists for sharing your expertise today. This was really informative, and I think we've heard about a lot of initiatives that are innovative and that many of us haven't heard about before. So it's given a lot of food for thought. And the recorded webinar will also be available on the forum, so you can go ahead and share that out with other colleagues. Again, and hope everybody has a great day.